Good evening, guys. Just gone 5 o'clock here in London, so just gonna have a quick look over. And as I'm speaking now, you've just got Euro making a new high for the week. Been a pretty common saying that over the last few, but what started as actually quite a dollar strength led week on Monday morning, we're now seeing the dollar weaken, and actually the dollar index is now on its lower levels, 0.4% down for the day. The euro just coming up to that high we saw on the 26th last week, so I would expect some resistance around there. Definitely worth keeping an eye on for those that are still in that market. It took a while to push above the R1, and since then it had actually pushed on quite nicely. This morning we'll come on to the sort of the main move of the day later, following the markets gapping higher in Nasdaq and DAX. But both, we'll start off with cable. Just before its data release at 9:30, we saw a quite nice push above what was the high of the day, a nice break of the trend line as well. That was sort of in place from the back end of last evening following the FOMC. Big push through, and then you also had a nice opportunity using yesterday's high for the classic. So a couple of good opportunities in the pound. The data didn't really deliver too much and was actually pretty much in its sort of yearly range. Let me just get the exact number, 55.3
for Viacom
for the manufacturing there. So we actually drifted down since then, but at the time when the dollar, which has been on a bit of a roller coaster today, was strengthening, albeit around sort of 2.30, the dollar started to weaken again, and the pound actually now pushing on as well, similar sort of fashion. Euro, which is pushing higher above its R1, the pound struggling a bit now, and it has actually been quite messy around there. But again, absolutely worth keeping an eye on in terms of whether we can push through or not. The euro this morning, the pivot was the level that needed breaking for the extended run, and you saw a nice opportunity both on the first test and second and third for the further push through. This candle here, sort of around that 2:30, 3 o'clock time, when the dollar started to weaken again, and now the euro is in pretty much touching distance on that high from the 26th, as we mentioned before. Other dollar pairs before we come on to the DAX, which was really the main talking point, I would say, today as it stands anyway. Aussie Dollar weakened following the data overnight and made its way quite nicely down to the S1. You see circled around here, found good support, and as we have just started to see the dollar weaken all over the place, you're now starting to see it drift up quite nicely. And if it weren't for the fact that the dollar was pretty weak, technically this looks a really nice level, using the overnight low before the data came out as an area of now resistance. I'm not sure I would definitely feel comfortable taking it on, just given how quickly this dollar is moving. Now the dollar index now down 0.43, so still got room to go, I would say. Have a quick look over the other markets. Canadian dollar, which has been half dragged around by oil today, but again with that weaker dollar, you're now seeing it come down to the lows, and nothing really focused on sort of a Canada point of view. The data was relatively in line, but dollar yen, which has been a tricky one to trade, I would say, this week, and you can see the last few days there. I'll just circle or a rectangle. It's, you know, equities going down, hasn't really been buying into it too much, or the dollar weakness as well. But now you're starting to see the market just get really even more choppy following a breakthrough. It's not necessarily a market I would fancy being involved in right now, when I feel there are better opportunities on pushes higher in both, say, the euro and the pound. With a bit of dollar weakness recently, you're also seeing oil having a nice push higher, supported by that fact. I would keep an eye on that R1 area. If we can break through there, it sort of opens the door a bit more to previous lows that we did break through back end of last week. Gold as well rose quite nicely higher. You had a decent push above the pivot, And you see here, no necessary reason through, but it's the same sort of time as obviously the pound and the euro were pushing on. So the dollar weakened around that point. Yes, we did come back to retest the level we broke through, but now just sort of getting squeezed in, not knowing really perhaps what to do with the fact that, and we'll come on to it, but equities are just now pushing higher. I would have this little, or no, not that one, I'd have a little trend on here just to see, are we going to respect it? You can see here, quite nice actually, going both ways. Obviously that's roughly drawn on the bottom one, but we'll definitely keep an eye on that for those sticking around. The main mover, let's get the DAX up here. You can see this is the daily range from where we gapped higher this morning. And circle that for you there. We then pushed on even higher, found resistance, well, almost getting to the high there of the 30th, and then it all came down. Lower the time frame down. I must stress there's not really been a fundamental reason for this. It's been more just technical breaks and sell-offs from there. Obviously the stronger euro is weighing on that, but the euro has only really just, over the last hour or so, really started to push on. You had the pivot this morning, or near the pivot, hold well as a good level of support. We then pushed higher and broke through. And, there's some good opportunities here. The classic of the low of the day, it held quite nicely before dropping to S1, and S1 gave a good opportunity, but from then it just sort of was a snowball effect, and selling after more selling and so on. If we just going to get another chart up here and just have a look on a daily chart, just to show the size of that move. So obviously the DAX is a choppy market, you can expect volatile moves, but a big candle there in terms of the size. And we're now, if we just draw up where the low point was, we got to levels not seen since the beginning of the year, that sort of first couple of trading days. To make the chart bigger, weekly level, you can see while it had already been chopped through what was the high of that sort of June, we found a bit of support on there, but really that level I wouldn't pay that much attention to, other than the fact that it's today's low now, having been chopped through quite a bit. At the same time that we had the DAX coming down, it was weighing on US equities. You can see here for S&P, you can see here for the Dow, you can see here for the Nasdaq. Since then, and cash open really sort of led a lot of buying here. We've found support and we pushed on a bit now. I think in terms of whether this is the end of the selling for the US, I don't want to necessarily say it is and you should all buy right now, but it seems definitely for the Dow we've broken quite an interesting level. Let me just put that on a 60-minute this morning, using the highs, or the all-time high, just coming down. There you go here, which have broken through that pivot level, and it could well be now that the end of this little January, or obviously February now, but the end of the month-end blip is behind us. Perhaps we'll see. We'll find out, I guess. But yeah, the Dow pushing on. S&P, as we speak, just finding resistance almost near that high marked up from the day and early in the morning. The Nasdaq pushing and finding resistance on the R1, which has been a really good level actually of resistance, funny enough, all sort of morning and then afternoon. So we'll be focusing on that. If we break through there, then perhaps you're going to get more buyers coming in. But as has been the case, I'll keep an eye on all these markets, because when they do slow down, find a bit of resistance, the sellers come back in, and they have been very aggressive over the last few days. So would definitely keep an eye on that, because there's some good opportunities for sure. One market I think is definitely worth a note as well is the Bitcoin one. Currently trading just under 9,000, started the day as you see up above 10. Well, you still see it still marks up that 9,500, what was previously the low of the year. We broke through there, and I guess you've even got a nice retest of that level once it broke. Was good support, broke through, then found resistance, and it's been going down. Couple of calls in the office will be coming in tomorrow and seeing 3,500. Whether that is the case or not remains to be seen. Personally, what do I reckon? I mean, it could be anything. I'm gonna say there's a bit of buying into the end of the day, and we're gonna be above 10,000. But who knows? Anthony, what are you thinking?
I'll be realistic. I'm gonna say 5-5.
5,500. Well, let's see. It could be one of the best calls of the year so far, if that is correct. Well, would be the best call of the year so far. Anyway, guys, I'm just going to leave it there. Tomorrow, well, just before I leave it there, tomorrow's is the big one, non-farm payrolls. Obviously, we'll do a rundown before it comes out. I'd say focus is got to be really now on the wage growth. That's what we want to see. You want to see a bit of that, or not any at all, to really get a good reaction. The market, as usual, will act off that headline number expected 178. Taking into account the ADP beat, maybe we are going to see a better number than that if you use that as the bellwether it is. Wouldn't perhaps look to see a long-lasting effect of the number. Unemployment as well has been so solid, 4.1 expected. Wouldn't expect any difference there as well. So average earnings is what the focus is on. Going forward, let me just switch over to show you there, and you just to stress as well that, as usual, the morning is going to be quiet, nothing really going on. But then again, we have seen some quite big moves in the market in terms of equity sell-offs. So, you know, don't take that too literally, I guess. But yeah, 130, and as usual, that's when it's going to pick up, and then some data into 2:45. Yeah, 2:45, and then 3 o'clock to wrap the week. In terms of the equity market, just to finish on one final point, I think from a technical analysis point of view, it's going to be very interesting to see where we do finish on that weekly chart. A lot of people that I know that are very fond technical analysts favour all their studies most, as in working best on that weekly chart. So it'll be an interesting one to sort of analyse over the weekend. My 2 pence is, I think, that all-time high isn't the all-time high for very long. I think we will go through, but you've got to react to it as and when. But anyway, guys, I will email this out and catch you all tomorrow.